chaos. Chaos in the house. Everything has been changing recently. Like, this room over the last couple of days has completely changed twice. Like, all the furniture's gone, the desk has had to have been shifted around to a new like wall area, and I'm finding it a bit hard just to like focus and get down onto work because of all these changes. This is all in preparation for like getting the house ready to be put up for sale. So I'm supposed to be working on like add-on development projects, and I really want to, but because it's just been hard like trying to focus on all of that with everything going on, I have instead been doodling and doing other things, but doodling largely because it's one of the things which kind of like helps me get centered mentally. So one thing we're going to do is we're actually going to have a little look. I'm going to show you how to do some of my doodles. Just to show you, let me bring some out. I actually did a Twitter post for this recently as well. But basically, I call this like my little attention deficit series, where I essentially just do semi-random doodles on sheets of paper. Some are colored, some aren't. And some of them are like very geometric, some of them are kind of much more organic. And they're just fun little things because like while I'm trying to focus on other stuff or like listen to a podcast, it's just fun to do little doodles. Because I always thought, well, if I'm always doodling on a notepad, like all those doodles are going to waste because, well, you know, you just turn the page and then it's gone. So why not actually do them on little pieces of paper with the possibility of then maybe one day like combining them or stripping them up or cutting them up and then using them as a collage for something and then maybe seeing if someone wants that. Now there is actually a logic to this. Like it's not completely random because like I have a cultural project I've been working on for years. It ties into an alternate reality game I ran in 2018 called Entropy. And just to keep it short, it's like a big sci-fi epic which takes place in something called the Hyperverse, which is technically like a multiverse, except we know it's designed. So it's like this infinite hyper reality, but it has been specifically designed as what you might call an interpretation engine, where basically it tries to detect consciousness and then build realities around that. So the whole thing is built around like these emotional principles or energies, and they're different colors and they have representative motives and then representative patterns. And when all the energies are present in equal amounts, they create what you would call a stable reality, which would be what this universe would be. So like the universe we're living in is a stable reality where they're all in equal amounts, and therefore you don't see any weird effects happening. So technically in this project, and I've got myself a little reference here, those energies can manifest in like different 3-dimensional or 2-dimensional patterns, like as you would kind of see them in a verse. So I have like a reference of kind of different shapes and how the logic of their motives kinds of flows into shapes. So when I say like kind of random for these, they're not completely random. So for example, these kind of blocky shapes here would come under the yellow type of energy, which is kind of more about constructing and building things and basically growth and the increasing complexity of shapes in a reality. So that's why you have like connecting blocks. Alternating contrasting lines is also kind of for like a green one, which is about kind of safety, absorption, and a lack of change. So they're comfortably hugging together and filling in empty space. So there is a kind of logic behind this. But anyway, today I was starting to do my largest one so far. Let me try and adjust the camera. And the way I will kind of want this piece to go is I want more organic shapes here. So again, like the kind of green type of energy, even though it's black and white. And then we'd have the yellow one here. So it's more constructing with faceted shapes on this side. Anyway, in a recent second channel video, I gave a bit of a sneak preview for some recent 3D work I was doing on this cultural project. There is also like a whole language, a con language, which goes with this, with like different modes of writing. So like handwritten and more digitized versions as well, kind of simulating the growth of this culture. Also, the weird thing about this culture is that it's like ever present throughout this hyperverse. So it's called the Matakovo, which basically means like the known perpetual culture. This is a bit weird to explain. Basically, there are like constant threads which try and manifest throughout all of reality. So there are like commonalities between different verses. Anyway, we're going to skip over some of that because there's a lot of lore behind it. I've got like a 70-something page collection of short stories and whatever. So the way I'm doing this is, like, as a general rule of thumb for these doodles, there can be no white space. Now, obviously there is some blank space here for the paper, but it's all kind of shaded. So I have like a biro, a technical drawing pencil, a fine liner, which is just like one fine point there. I also have the same color, but as a brush, which is handy for filling in like the larger shapes. And then just some general color fine liners as well. So these will come in a variety of colors, but they will actually appear differently depending on the type of paper. So that's a little bit annoying. But basically this green one appears yellow on this paper, which is a bit weird to kind of get your head around, but you know, you can just do like a little bit of testing and that's fine. So generally for these, I don't like the color areas to touch too much. So for example, I'll look at this section here, which I've drawn out. I think, okay, well, we can fill this in yellow because these other areas won't necessarily be touching. So one thing I tend to do with this is I tend to just start making a motion, but I don't start on the edge, because if you start on the edge, generally you can like pick up ink and it will bring it into the shape. Now there's really going to be some ink left over possibly on the end of the pen, so there's only so much you can do really, but I kind of start more centrally and then just move around to the edges later. Also, when you lay the ink down, it's going to be darker to start with, so that will kind of pale out, and then in the end it will be fine. You can always go over it again if you want to make it stronger. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but kind of that's going to dry out and it will look better. Then for possibly like this area here, which is a bit longer, I like to do this combination of a biro and a pencil because I quite like the texture of that. So the way this is done, sometimes I'll like kind of put down one of these like glasses or screen cleaner fabrics, is I'll just do like a general cover with pencil first, quite lightly. With these technical drawing pencils, you'll notice that if you actually use it for a little bit, it will kind of wear it down to an angled point, and the flat point is always easier to kind of do sketches with. I mean, just for like kind of filling in space. Now, I don't like having quite obvious angles on these sketches, so I'll do that kind of initially to start with, and then I'll come back around and do it from a perpendicular angle. So this is again just like kind of just lightly filling in the space there, and then I'll do it from another angle as well. Just kind of like lightly brushing over the surface, just so we make it, you know, a bit slightly more shaded than the next block. And then possibly even what I do is I go from a corner, I push down a bit harder, and then release the pressure slightly as we come away from the corner. Same thing again. Sometimes I will turn the technical drawing pencil slightly as well, because then we're kind of going against that flat corner and we're breaking off more of that material. And you can do this repeatedly. You can also do it kind of along the edges as well, like kind of stronger from the edge and then releasing, just to try and darken it a bit. And I'll do this side before we move on to biro. So I've got like kind of one layer there going. Now the biro is quite a risk. So let me just take a little bit of extra paper here. So generally, I try and make sure that the biro can flow, because ink can kind of, well, I just made a mistake there on the paper, but that'll be fine because we can cover that up. So like ink can generally clump on the biros, and also the flow isn't as consistent as like a fine liner. So for example, if I take one here, a fine liner just has like a constant flow. A biro doesn't necessarily do that. Sometimes you might find some areas to which like don't flow as easily, which is a bit annoying. But actually, let me just draw a line here so I know where to fix this. Okay, so I'll get to fixing that a bit later, or maybe I'll just do that now so we can cover that up and not worry about it. So one thing I do with like long segments like this is, because I'm using a fine liner for the edges, and obviously it's quite like a small contact point, I don't necessarily want to waste all the ink with that. So I just make sure the edges are defined, and then I'll grab the brush and then fill in the extra space with the brush. Okay, fine. So now for the texture. With the biro, you've got to be very light with this. In fact, I'm going to bring my paper back just so we can get the flow. I generally start by kind of doing like little flicks just to get like some of these line points going. Not too many. I don't want to do too much there, just so I can get a feel for the pressure. And then if I'm feeling it, I'll kind of go parallel to the edge and just add a few lines again, making sure to kind of decrease that pressure. And then I'll go kind of angled against the corner. So because we've done some lines to start with, when we go against a corner, we're essentially like kind of cross-hatching it. So let me do that again, just add like a few extra kind of lines here, make some a bit longer along that edge. Okay, not too bad. And then I'm going to come back and cross-hatch it a bit from that side, and then maybe give a bit more love to this. It's okay if there are like imperfect lines, because I actually quite like the fact that you can tell it's hand done. And now once I'm kind of happy with that, I'll go and do a second layer with the pencil here, again going along those edges and just trying to fill it in, make it a bit more gray, darkening where the biro has been. So then that's all right. So that'll be like another kind of section done, and we can move on with the pattern. So I'm thinking I'll do this one in a yellow so we can have some more of that accent coming over. So I'll grab my pen, maybe try and clean off like picked up black ink, and then start from away from the edge again, just filling in some space, moving towards the corners, possibly go over a few times, but knowing that it's going to dry, so we don't need to worry too much about the inconsistent darkness of the ink at the moment, because again, looking over here, this was the one we did earlier, now it's dried, it looks way more consistent with the color, so we don't need to worry too much about that. Okay, so that's another little bit done. So basically, I'll just keep doing that until this general area has been filled with this faceting style. There is one more little pattern element I've been doing here as well, so I'll just show you this. This one is pencil only, so maybe I'm going to save this for like a kind of repeating shrinking pattern, because it's like the larger element in this group. Possibly, maybe on this one, I'm going to draw an extra line down. And I'm going to fill this one with just pencil alone. So these ones are quite easy to do. Again, we take like the flatter section of the technical pencil, just try and fill it in with a consistent pressure. Again, do a kind of contrasting line there. Doesn't matter if the pressure is different towards the end, because we're actually going to lean into that now. Do a harder pressure on the end as we bring it in. Same on the other side. Actually, I'm going to do it on the contrasting angle. So we're essentially just trying to make like a shaded gradient from the ends towards the center point there. You can go along the edges as well, just as long as it kind of looks nicely shaded from a distance. But again, because we're using the biro, we're kind of going for like a rough look on this one. So anyway, yeah, like I said, eventually what I'll do is I'll have this side of the page faceted with these kind of constructing patterns, and then this side will be much more fluid with the organic ones. But anyway, yeah, so this is going to be a longer term one. If I sit down, I could probably finish the whole thing in a few hours, but you know, I have other work to do as well. But it's really fun doing this. Like when you're doing it kind of mindlessly, maybe listening to podcasts or watching videos as well, it just helps me think, because I can run around like different priorities for tasks in my mind. I think, okay, well, if we do this first, then we can do this, and you know, measuring up time responsibilities. So what I'll do now is probably actually genuinely try to allocate some time for development today, although I know I will probably be called away to work on other tasks. But yeah, just a fun little thing to work on. It's really addictive filling in the space. So yeah, thanks for coming with me on a bit of a different journey. If you made it to the end, put like a pen or a pencil emoji in. So yeah, have a great day, everyone.